G'day everyone, True here and welcome to another African Violet video. Today I'm going to be repotting this new plant that I got that's not in great condition. Whenever you get a new plant home into your collection, you always need to repot it into new soil because the soil can be harboring pests, and also the soil that they do put these in is quite soggy, and they do that, has a lot of peat moss in it, and they use this sort of soil because they want to retain as much moisture as possible, from when they leave the nursery to when they're actually going into stores to sell. So these aren't looking great, but we're going to repot them, and I'll show you how to repot them today. Now I'm using a mixture of soil which is it's around, I would say, 70% perlite and 30% cacti and succulent soil I'm using today. I change my soil mixture throughout the year depending on the climate that I have, because where I live I get a lot of fluctuations in temperature and climate. So sometimes I'll need to add more perlite to the soil. Sometimes I might add no perlite to the soil. I have very, very hot summers where I live, so sometimes I won't add any perlite into the soil, and I'll just use straight either African violet soil or cacti and succulent soil, which you can use. And if you're living somewhere that's really, really dry and you can't keep the water up to your plants, you can always add some vermiculite into your soil mix because that'll help retain moisture. If you want to help get the soil to dry out a bit quicker, you'll add more perlite because perlite helps with drainage and aeration of the soil. So it just depends on your climate and as to what soil mix you use. But because at the moment we're in the middle of winter, so I don't really need to water my plants very often at all. And when I am watering them, they're taking quite a long time. I don't wick water my plants, I just water from the top. But it's taking a long time for the soil to dry out, and I don't like my African violets to sit in wet, soggy soil for very long. They don't like it either, so that's why I'm adding quite a fair amount of perlite into these this plant, and I've got others I'm going to be repotting as well, but I'll show you with this one. So the first thing we need to do is take it out of the pot. So you just squeeze the pot gently, put your thumb and finger on either side of the plant and gently slide it out. So you want to try and get rid of all this old soil. You can see the roots are actually touching the side of the pot, and African violets do like to be root bound. That helps them to flower. So we'll get rid of all this old soil. It's best to try not to disturb the roots, or disturb the roots as little as possible. African violets don't like to have their roots disturbed. So we can try and get, but it's very difficult. You still are going to disturb them a bit. When they actually, a lot of commercial growers, they use these sort of, I'm not sure what you call them, but I don't know, I call them like jiffy pots, but they're like these little pots that they grow them in. So it'll have like this kind of like a peat mossy core exterior to it. And they're like little tiny core pots that they sit in. And I don't like them because when they put African violets in them, this one isn't too bad, but a lot of them that I've been repotting, they get very, very long necks to them. And so I don't think they're the best to be, so any commercial growers out there of African violets, please stop doing that. It's really annoying. And it gives them, like, they already have this start of this long neck happening, and this one's not too bad, but some of the ones I've been repotting, they've had necks that have been about that long because of these little pots that they put them in. But that's all that I'm going to take off that one. So we'll get rid of our old soil. I'm actually going to be planting these ones up into a terracotta pot. The one thing with terracotta is that it dries out really, really quickly. But because of the climate that I'm having here at the moment, I'm quite happy with that. When it comes up to around summertime, that would be in about 6 months' time, and it'll be time to repot the African violet into some new soil, because you should be repotting your African violets into new soil every 6 months, because the only nutrient, well, they after 6 months, and when you repot them, you'll actually see the soil will look, it'll get all really hard, and it won't feel nice and nutrienty. I don't know how to explain it, but the soil will look different after 6 months, and that's because the African violet sucked all the nutrients out of it, and then it needs some new soil. So I'm going to pot this into terracotta because I want the plant to be staying quite dry, the soil to stay quite dry. The only thing with terracotta is that the outside does get quite cool. So if you have leaves that are sitting and touching this outside surface here, they'll probably die off. So if you're having that, that's the reason why it's happening. Because this is a bit rough too, and it can scratch it and damage it. But because this plant is quite large, the leaves are going to be sitting up off the pot, and I shouldn't have that problem at all. Now, when you're repotting the African violets, you want to just moisten the soil a little bit. You're going to lose, I mean, I can pull all these flowers off. Some people say you should pull all the flowers off because then they put the energy, your plant will put the energy into, growing new roots, and because it will go into a bit of shock now that it's been repotted. But I just leave it. If the flowers die off, I just remove the flowers. See how I go. Now you can see on the outside of this pot, it's got some of this white sort of marking. That's because this pot has been used before, and this is like the salts that are coming out. When you water the plant, some of the sort of salts in the soils, minerals in the soils come out, and they'll mark the outside of the pot. I don't worry about that too much. You don't want to compact the soil too much, because you want it to stay quite nice and airy, because African violets like the soil to be nice and airy. And that's it. So you'll always lose a couple of leaves in the process of repotting, and sometimes you might have more than one crown in your plant and you have to divide up. Well, you don't have to divide it up. You can leave it if you want, but you can divide it up into 2 plants if you want. This one's only got one crown, but it should recover quite nicely, and it'll take a while, but it should recover quite well. So I hope that that's helped a little bit. That's just a quick little general overview of how to repot a new plant when you bring them home. A very quick little bit of information on the soil that you use, and I hope that this helps you have beautiful African violets. And thank you for watching. Bye bye.